Today we're going to learn how to solve what are called quadratics, or a quadratic equation is an equation in the x squared format, or an x squared, p squared, t squared, anything with a squared equal to a number. That's what we're going to learn how to solve today. So similar to a square, just like absolute value, we're going to learn that if we have a squared coefficient, we are going to have two answers. How do we get those two answers? Well, in algebra we always do opposites. So the opposite of a squared is to take the square root. And so when we take the square root of a squared, we're going to get just p. When we take the square root of 9, you'll probably remember that we have a 3. What some students forget is that we also have a negative 3. Now, why does that work? Let's check. If we have 3 squared, we get 9. If we have a negative 3 squared, a negative times a negative is also a positive 9. So the big thing about quadratic equations is that we'll always have two answers, and probably the easiest way to solve a quadratic is in number 2. If we want to solve x squared, we're going to take the square root of both sides. And when I take the square root of a variable squared, I just get n. These first couple are perfect squares, so the square root of 25, we can put a plus or minus 5. So understand we have two answers. Press pause, and I'll give you another problem. Now, just like equations, sometimes they get a little bit more difficult. So you can see here that I actually have a b squared minus 8 equal 41. So before we can get take the square root of both sides, you want to get it into some variable squared equal to some other number. Before you can take the square root, it must be in this form. So I can get that with one simple step. That one simple step is to add 8 to both sides. When I do that, I'll get a b squared equals 49. Now I can solve for a quadratic. We take the square root of both sides. Remember that when we take the square root of b squared, we get b. When we take a square root of 49, not only do we get a 7, but we also get a negative 7. I'm going to do one last example with you, and this is as complicated as the equations are going to be today. So we're going to have a coefficient in front of the x squared. We're also going to have to do some basic algebra. Again, our goal before we take the square root, we want to get it down to an x squared equals something. So sometimes we have to do more than one step to get it to an x squared. So those basic algebra skills are still the opposite. So the opposite of a plus 10 is a minus 10. So we get a 3x squared equal 300. We're close to having it an x squared equals, but we'll do the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Now we have an x squared equal 100. Once you get it down to the x squared equals, then and only then can you take the square root, and you get the square root of 100 is exactly 10. Don't forget to put the plus minus. Don't take the square root until you have it in the form an x squared equals something. So one last example is a 2a squared minus 3 equals 47. Again, we'll work through. Our goal is to get it down to an a squared equals something. So the algebraic steps I will do to get that will be I will add 3. I'll get a 2a squared equals 50. Divide both sides by 2. I'll end up with an a squared equal 25. Now and only now can I undo the square. And how do I undo a square? I take the square root. Okay. So double check your answers. Again, if I can double check my answers, I can plug in 5 back into my equation. When I plug in 5 back into my equation, subtract off 3. Let's see if this works. So 2 times 25 is 50, and 50 minus 3 is equal to 47. To check for the negative 5, we have a 2 times a negative 5 squared. Remember, we do, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, so we do parentheses and exponents first. So we get a 2 times 25, which again is 50, minus 3, we get 47. And both of those answers check. I've got some equations that I'd like you to do on your own. Again, if you're having difficulties with these, getting the right answers, please stop, rewind, ask. You can always go to Khan Academy and look under solving quadratics there as well.